Hey everyone, you guys are going to make a Trophic Levels foldable today that's going to go in your science journal. So first thing you'll want to do is get one of these papers, and then you will also need some colored pencils or markers, scissors, and glue. You're going to glue it in at the end. Okay, so first thing with this paper is you are going to cut out not just the triangle, but do you see how there's some dotted lines on the side? You're going to cut out just the general pattern. Go ahead and pause the video while you are cutting out the basic pattern. Okay, so now you should have just this. If you're not at this point, go ahead and pause the video and cut out your picture until you get this. The next part is we want to cut on all of these dotted lines, but it's a little bit easier if you actually fold it first. So we are going to fold it on this seam and this seam. So if you take your first side and you're going to want to mash this up, it's a little bit easier if you do it face down, but I'm going to try and show you guys what I'm doing. So I'm just going to mash it up with that line, try and make some creases. Okay, mash it up so it's like this. So essentially it's like folded now, and then you're going to be able to lift it up. Okay, so fold it down so that there's a crease, and then when you open it back up, you're going to cut on each of these dotted lines so that it makes a flap. So it's going to end up looking just like this. Okay, so you have it folded, and you have it so it opens up. Each one opens up individually. Okay. All right, and then you're going to do that to the other side. Again, go ahead and pause this video at any time if you need to. But you're just going to bend the other side. So essentially you're taking it from this and then cutting on those dotted lines so you have it on both sides. Just get mine done real quick. Okay, and then you can go ahead and just glue this into your science journal. Once everything's done, you're going to put the glue on this side so that the flaps lay flat in your science journal. So your finished product is eventually going to look something like this. Okay, so just notice that your flaps are on the front side. All right, go ahead and pause until you are complete with those items. Okay, so first I just have a little background knowledge. In the last abiotic and biotic hyperdoc that you guys were working on and the energy one, I had a few things about food webs and a few different examples of those. So a food web is a model that shows feeding relationships between populations in an ecosystem. Food webs use arrows to represent the transfer of energy and matter from one organism to another. The arrow points away from the prey and towards the predator, because when a predator eats the prey, the energy and matter from the prey become part of the energy for the predator. Okay, so notice that all of your arrows are going that way. So it's not showing what it's eating, that's showing the direction of the energy. Okay, so then in food webs, some prey had arrows pointing to multiple predators, and some predators have multiple prey. The flow of energy and matter through an ecosystem can take many paths. Each individual path is called a food chain, right? So the whole thing is called a web, but if you're looking at one path, like you have a plant, the grasshopper eats the plant, the bird is going to eat the grasshopper, just one path of going from producer to the list of consumers, that's going to be a food chain. Okay. So and this is the first thing that you are going to write down on your model. So when you have this glued in, you are going to be looking on the left side of it. So the side where when you open up the flap, it has the picture of what it's going to be. So a trophic pyramid is a model that visually represents how energy is transferred from one stage to the next in the food chain. On the outside left, label the 4 levels of your pyramid. So I have the pyramid structure here, and then I also have just exactly what you are going to write down. Your bottom left corner is going to be producers, and then that goes up to primary consumers, secondary consumers, and tertiary consumers, right? So first, second, and third level of consumers. So go ahead and pause and write those things down on the outside. Okay, so go ahead and label those and then unpause the video when you are done. Okay, now on the other side, so the right side, and I have actually colored mine in yellow, you are going to write the amount of energy that is conserved. So the amount of energy that actually gets passed to the next level. So if you notice down at the bottom, so on the left side, I have 100% energy conserved. So this is actually because plants, which are going to be your producers, create their own food, right? So they don't have to use energy from really anything else. So 100% of their energy is conserved. So I got colored pencils and I just colored them in. I know it's not the best picture because there's a little bit of a glare, but I started out with a darker yellow and then I had this gradient going up. So you can see the 0.01% of energy is a really, really pale yellow. So if you want to do something similar to that, you can. I just used one colored pencil, colored it in dark, and then colored a little bit lighter, going each way. So if that's something you want to do, if you are a visual person, go ahead. Otherwise, it's something you can skip and you can just write the names of them on the outside. 100%, and then it drops each time. So 10%, 1%, 0.1% energy. Go ahead and pause, and then again, play when you're ready. Okay, so then looking more at this, only 10% of the energy is transferred between the trophic levels. So that, again, is looking at this 100% primary consumers. And again, they are using the sun's energy and they're not using it from anywhere else. A lot of this actually gets recycled back by the decomposers. And then we have a energy loss, and that is always going to go as a form of heat is lost through that level. Notice that on this diagram, we actually have an apex predator. There will be questions about that later on, or some things that we can talk about, but be thinking about, what do you think that apex predator means? It's above those tertiary consumers. Okay, so where does the energy go? Oops, get that out of the way. So think about how much you have eaten in your life compared to how big you are. Where did all the extra food and energy go that you consumed end up at? It takes a lot of energy just to exist. The grasshopper uses the energy from the food they consume to move and metabolize just to stay alive, releasing heat as a byproduct of cellular respiration. By the time a bird consumes the grasshopper has already used much of its plant's energy for itself, right? So you have to use so much food just for you to stay alive, right? So if someone else, if you get attacked by a bear or something, right, something else is consuming you. A lot of like the food and all of the energy that you ate, a lot of that's already going to be used by you. So only 10% of that is going to be left going to each level. The trend continues with 90% of energy being transformed into heat before it can get taken on to the next level. Okay, so now we're going to write on the inside of it. So if you open up those flaps, you can just kind of flatten them in your journal so it looks like this. You notice you have some pictures on the side. You can take some time and color those at the end if you would like to. But otherwise, you really just need to write the stuff on the other side. You will now write on the inside of those flaps. And notice that what is going to be on yellow, I still included it on each page just because so you can, get an understanding for what is going on at each level, but you don't need to write it. So the only thing you'll need to write is what is in green. And I'll show you an example of that. But here's kind of our end product that we're moving to. Okay, so producers. Producers are called autotrophs because they make their own food. So you'll write the word autotroph down, and then underneath it, write capture energy from sun and matter from air to make food. 100% of energy is conserved. So what it's going to look like in your journal then, what you're writing down is just inside this yellow flap. If you can see that, I wrote autotroph and then capture energy from sun and matter from the air to make food. Okay, so then we're just going to go through each flap and write what happens at each level. Okay, so then you have your primary consumer. Let's see if I can figure out Screencastify to make that a little bit smaller. Okay, oops. So primary consumers are herbivores. So think of these are small insects. These are things that eat plants, right? They're eating the producers. So they're herbivores. They're the first to consume plants. So that's all you need to write down, just what is in green. Between the plant itself and the organism, that consumes it, metabolizing the calories, only about 10% of the energy from the producer is available to be used. So again, remember that producer is going to be using so much of its own energy that there's not going to be a whole lot to be passed on to the next level. Okay, secondary consumer. These are going to be omnivores. So that means they eat meat and they eat plants. And they eat the primary consumer as well. So they're going to eat some producers, but they also eat those primary consumers. So you might think of this one as like small worms or insects. So by the time we get to the third trophic level, only 1% of the energy from the producer is available. So that's another side note. It drops by that, only 10% moves on to the next level. So these numbers are all in association to that original energy source, which is our producer. So again, on the side, all you need to write down is what's in green. So omnivore, and then it eats the primary consumer. Okay, tertiary consumer. So these are mostly carnivores and they eat the secondary consumers. By the time the food chain has reached the tertiary consumer, only about 0.1% of the producer's energy is still available. Okay, and so now you have your finished product. Again, remember you can pause this video or go back anything that you need to, but when it's all said and done, just showing you the same thing, you can put a nice little label at the bottom that says trophic levels or ecosystem trophic levels. But now when we're doing some vocabulary practice, you'll have something to look back at.